Hi, this is author-philosopher Ronald E. Springer of EthicsUnderground.com here to continue the reading of Moral Armor. Chapter 8, Part 20, The Abyss, Irrational Invalidation. Please hit like and subscribe before we dive in. Why is it that the last to be accepted as true is always what every indicator pointed to in the first place? Why does it take so long for anything truly moral or rational to catch on? History is filled with stories of men overcoming great odds, obstacles often put there by other men and accomplishing the unthinkable. They were fought every step of the way in the name of avoiding unsubstantiated disasters, while the achievers created railroads, factories, power grids, and the electric light. We hear how our acts of creation will bring destruction, a destruction that never comes. We are the evil West. Evil because our laws protect the rights of every man, regardless of his connections, the connections that determine whether you live or die in those other countries. The best of the West work uphill against howling protests stirred within those intimidated by our endeavors, while our advances are enjoyed in silence. Everyone forgets the fight, but we don't. Most of us can't conceive of how the populace can fall for the senseless, foundationless ravings of our opposition. Can't they see through the malice? As a consequence, we, as the self-made, are left more desolate and with a strained respect for our fellow men in general. What if there was a pattern to it? As humans, our every premonition tells us to follow our gut, to discover and name the proper course for our every endeavor. Essentially, in innocence, that is all we, as the self-made, are doing, every step of our lives. The spirit murderer's fear tells them not to follow their gut and to disallow it to others as well, knowing it leads to the truth about themselves, about the true purpose of life, and about those they damn. In avoiding proper coherency, here are some of their key means of invalidation. Value inversion, his false hierarchy. Morality to a volitional being is the basic mental tool of life. For a spirit murderer, it is used as a weapon of destruction. A carpenter's hammer is a tool designed for a moral intention to produce the benefits enjoyed by a civil society. In the hands of a psychotic, it can be used to kill. The main premise of a moral man is life, and he is proud of the volume of his tool chest, of the many ways he can bring it about. The main premise of an immoral man is death, and he derives significance by means of his arsenal as well, of the many ways he can bring it about. If you were to imagine the fear-driven structure of mind, it is a constant willed reversal of normal intellectual flow. Like an intestine turning on itself, everything is inside out and backwards, with every muscle tensed for the purpose of inversion. Never intending any correction, it is fully dedicated to the completion of its reversal, believing it will arrive at the world as it wishes it were. Have you ever righted a rubber band just to see it twist itself back again? Inversion is his steady state, where he feels most comfortable, not because it's natural, but because he is so uncomfortable with the world as it is. To back out is his first premonition. Any step towards clarity is a step in the wrong direction, summoned by what is considered evil to the success of his fundamental goal. In day-to-day experience, we'll see a spirit murderer approach values in a specific pattern. 1. He mimics the simpler values. 2. Claims the more complex values are a gift or the result of luck. And 3. Claims the highest values are impossible. If he can't succeed in ignoring them, he'll attempt to neutralize their positivism or declare them a vice through judgment by improper standards. In the meantime, he'll attempt to steal, deface, or destroy them, as they exist contrary to his view of human possibility. If he can't have it, neither can anyone else. In dealing with non-values or vices, his pattern is the same. 1. He pretends not to have them. 2. Claims they are the result of bad luck, to blame others, or 3, to claim that nothing better is possible to man. If he doesn't succeed in concealing them, he'll attempt to neutralize their negativity, even declaring them a virtue to be worshipped, replacing true virtues. In secret, he prizes his evil as a reproach to life, works to preserve and foster it, and ultimately works to confirm his stubbornly irrational view of existence by empowering it. In contrast, self-made man treats all human values, necessities, and luxuries in a very straightforward manner. He seeks to earn them, considers them wholly possible, worships their grandeur, studies their every attribute, decides what he wants, and maps out their attainment. He treats non-values with the same pattern, just reversed. He seeks to eliminate them, aware of their ominous threat to his life and spirit if he doesn't. He studies their every attribute to know their danger and step by step, flaw by flaw, maps out their eradication. You know, it is easier to pull a trigger than it is to play a guitar. Desperado. Easier to denounce than to give a carefully reasoned argument. Easier to stab than to suture. Easier to demolish than to build. Easier to submit than to think, and easier to form a gang than to form a treaty. These values require what the fear-driven lack: a calm, patient discipline with oneself and one's task, beginning with cognition. Such a perspective violates his pretense of automatic, effortless perfection and implies an obligation he is missing the path to practice. Its lack is the result of practicing its opposite, irrationality, and his whole means of premise construction is off as a consequence. It requires him to come face to face with an aptitude that by his unrealistic standard, he is supposed to have already, an impossible esteem predicament for him. A key misdirection in the field of psychology is attempting to catalog every instance of such pathology. The fear-driven combinations of default and senseless reasoning are infinite, multiplying as fast as it takes him to cower in response to any looming responsibility. All forms of psychopathology begin with the intentional or unintentional, self-assumed, dogmatic, or cultural misplacement of existence and consciousness in one's hierarchy of values, placing consciousness first, before what it is conscious of. To believe consciousness to be a power determining existence itself, versus its true role of observance. This is the choice and difference between objectivity and subjectivity. If the argument of the subjective were put into words, it might go something like this. That idea is useless or wrong because it is not yours. You have no right to use it, mention it, or benefit from it. It is invalid because it was learned through the effort of another mind. And since it was his reality, not yours, it is inapplicable to any other human being. Psychology is not the study of human thought in action. Philosophy is. That semi-conscious behavioral elements make up the vast majority of human action and relegate themselves to psychoanalysis is due to the present moral limitations on cognitive advancement, not due to a fault in the nature of the species. Whether he is attempting to validate a false premise or invalidate a true one, his regard for facts is the same, as is his pattern: escape. All rational validation or invalidation is arrived at by a like process, looking for consonance with, or contradiction to, existential evidence. Self-made man macro and micro studies every element to understand what it is, what it does, and how it fits in. He identifies the essential characteristics of an idea or an entity, isolating and analyzing with no fear to see. The better defined his object, the closer he can come to enacting the causes which reap his desired effects. This is the anatomy of rational cognition, whose antithetic process is the acceptance or rejection of ideas without gathering and analyzing measurable data. Instead, fear-driven man avoids measurable data and reaches for the immeasurable elements to reinforce his cognitive shield. He follows no fixed pattern of identification and has no respect for analytical methods for anything defining a thing which cannot be something else in the next moment. He abandons such discipline, being most comfortable with maybe this and maybe that, with no constructive point and no intended conclusions, beyond confirming that approximations are the closest one can come to understand anything. In reason he will agree, having to, but he still won't act on reason. His senses will be heightened to find the slightest justification not to, instead of his natural responsibility to look deeper. He'll maintain a pose of conformity while in your presence, bursting at the seams to defy it once you are out of range. He doesn't delve into anything. He doesn't want to know what anything is, what anything does, or what it fits into. He is not integrating, and in tantrum will not, until the standard is reversed in favor of his false premises. Creeping death. Still, as self-potencies are the drivers of all human action, subjective outgrowths are all powered by self-acknowledged potencies of the fear-driven, even their confirmation of impotence. They will only do consistently what they believe they can, an action of true esteem. Therefore, all evil actions are accomplished through living means. To mask and protect his flaws, he inevitably places his power for living in the service of death. Ever have someone breathe down your neck, implying violence as the consequence of opposing their view? Of course, we all have. During their physically potent years, force in place of reasonable persuasion is a popular alternative for the fear-driven. Clinging to an automatic advantage such as size, he wants to believe that a victory won by violence is proof of his superiority, which in his delusion is to transcend over all other realms, but domination doesn't determine rank in thought. Compensating for non-thought, he tries to force his errors to be true by wiping out whoever or whatever says it isn't, but it does as much good as punching and kicking at a rainstorm. Facts are not altered by intimidation. No link is added, and no advancement is brought about, except those of medical treatments and arrest records. From an abusive spouse to Soviet Russia, nothing but physical and spiritual harm is ever accomplished by the introduction of violence, on any scale. It gets really frightening when spirit murderers combine this with religion. They say, "My erroneous frame of reference says something is evil," a lesson memorized with no chain to back it, and that justifies anything I do in its name. A license for slaughter. Religion becomes a template for destruction, sanctioned by an anonymous source that supposedly did the reasoning for them. They need not convince their opposition, but only wipe them out, as disagreement alone declares them evil. The fear-driven hold their worship of God and faith pitted against self and thought, instead of attempting any integration, because they intend one to replace the other. Faith, then, as they preach it, is a form of lying, and attack is a form of escape. It is not reliance on a higher power, but the simple abandonment of cognitive effort, and then of civility. It is much easier to submit to faith and brandish force than to stick to the discipline of the chain. Slander. As an alternative to violence, and instead of facing an issue, he'll try to discredit you through a tactic known as straw man, properly damning an evil trait, which in truth you do not possess. Setting up his straw man and then knocking it down is the photo negative of a white lie, where the liar tries to gain esteem from a valuable trait which he does not possess. We see it often in politics, where they prey on scandal called mudslinging or muckraking. They'll exclaim, "Your idea is wrong," or "You're evil because you slept with someone, said something, did something, are a Christian, aren't a Christian," in an attempt to stretch damnation for an irrelevant issue over a relevant one. We hear, "You're not degreed," implying that we are not licensed to think and must accept without question the mental contents of those who are. But their quest for credentials, never facts, is a substitute for acquiring the capacity to properly gauge competence. They can never face an issue head-on, and instead lean on whatever takes the focus off, not just the issue, but off of a rational process of validation. In all awareness, it must be no fun at all to need to discredit others in order to maintain one's own assertions. To mudsling is to seek a scapegoat for an evasion of moral guilt. You are being framed as evil or incompetent by evil or incompetence. Oftentimes, he needs even less than a false rationale to damn. Does 2 + 2 not equal 4 because you hate your math teacher? Of course not. Yet in less straightforward situations, we hear, "I don't like him, so I wouldn't believe anything he says." A non-essential attribute serves as barrier to any valuable conveyance. A big nose, a gruff voice, any disenchantment their unconditional love is supposed to overlook is enough to sever their comprehension. I say, liking each other is beside the point. What is. Even lower and simpler along this strain is attempting to shame an action or a value. Once in my marina on the 4th of July, I was passing by some drunks, I'm guessing, who were slurring God knows what, pointing and making these full-bodied gestures in my direction. I stopped and looked at them in curious amusement. Having my attention, they stepped it up, then noticed others watching them and stopped abruptly in embarrassment. I didn't get what they were after, but I knew their essence. Spirit murderers sneer because it is an action they find most frightening. To me, it was meaningless. When focus is misdirected off of validation, it heads towards a host of non-constructive alternatives, all with the same results, the impotence of mind and of man. They'll say, "Someone else said something else," and I agree with them, still without any reasoning, or my personal favorite, "No matter what you say, it won't change my mind." This is a blatant affront to proper epistemological structure and personal growth. The less thoughtful they are, the more they rely on superstitious and mystical threats. You will go to hell just for thinking it, claiming that the issue violates a predisposition or belief and therefore cannot be contemplated. Unproven predispositions or muckraking are only a fool's self-protection from epistemological showcasing, revealing to others how well their mind works. You'll face a plethora of chauvinistic bias before any sense is made or accepted. Anything relying on the senses is necessarily invalid, as it was your senses, not mine. What's true for you may not be true for me. What works for you won't work for me. Such attempts pretend that existence tailors its identity to every individual rather than the truth, that an individual must tailor his identity within the constraints of reality. Speak common sense or the uncommon levels above, and you won't get a word in edgewise. Knowledge, success, answers, these are not what he's after. He needs to think that a success overshadowing his own is possible only by sinking lower than he did. I get bored quickly, so my rebuttal to a parking lot debate is, I won't argue the validity of my premises on success versus yours. My premises earned this car. I'm the one with the Lamborghini. Still, he'll listen to everyone except the guy driving out of the dealership in it, the only one to tell him that it is possible, and by moral means, what he is afraid to hear. False associations. A lazy chainer grasps the most rudimentary connections and will not effort beyond them. Thought is so great an imposition that he grants as true whatever connection is made most easily and shirks any further investigation. Rather than invest the effort to correct them, he lives a life riddled with cognitive errors, compensating simply by refusing their acknowledgement. Faking that a greater depth could never override his base connections, his only self-grasped conclusions, no deeper argument can stick. No doubt you have experienced the hopeless trauma of demystifying an issue for someone step by step, only to find that you've gotten nowhere. He chases his tail, clinging to his own initial observance, loyal to the chosen limit of his cognitive power, even after his verdict has been clearly disproven. With someone eager to learn, you watch them grow and they surprise you with fresh variations, fun for teacher and student. With him, it's back to square one, again and again. Explanations are a wasted courtesy. Such a mind cannot tell the difference between sound, competent effort and incompetence due to his own. Unlike Spider-Man, he can't sling a web and swing to a new conclusion. How exciting it is to discover new vindications, to no longer be bound by senseless condemnation, to be suddenly freed from inefficient patterns, punishment, and a guilt so old we didn't even realize we carried it. The fear-driven don't share our excitement in such a release. A step in a new direction is an unwelcome burden, another chance to fall flat. Barriers are safety to him, a reason to stop. He bounces along the path of least resistance, sightless and mindless, ricocheting off of any cognitive pressure, wishing the road would just end. Biochemically, this leads in only one direction, decay. He wanders through a maze of semi-acknowledged, semi-evaded data, placing degenerative elements in his chain, whose every offshoot is sick. The short, snarled branching guides his life to nothing but dead ends, while bringing mobility to harm, with him at its constant center. His mounting incapacities result in a well-deserved low self-worth. The glass house of esteem he builds requires a retaining wall of insubstantiation to keep it from crashing down, and hence, he is locked in a downward spiral. That's all for now. Next up is a manic waste of time. I split these videos up by subject so you'd have a better chance of finding moral armor, and then perhaps go through the whole thing for free. Why? To help create a leader in every life. Sound civilization stair-steps up from sound coherence to sound individual to productive groups of mature individuals. Self-hatred drives fear-driven people in our world to wipe out the individual, so we all need moral armor to protect ourselves and the future of mankind. Click subscribe and leave a thumbs up if you'd like to help wipe out moral confusion fast and make the world a better place.